It was supposed to be a quiet afternoon, the kind where a person could walk through a store without anyone paying attention. The off-duty agent stepped inside the large department store just to pick up a small gift for a colleague. After weeks of long hours and stressful cases, it felt good to walk around in normal clothes, blending in like any other shopper. No badge on display, no one knowing what they did for a living. They moved slowly through the aisles, checking a few items, comparing prices, and thinking about what would make a simple but meaningful gift. Their face was calm, but their mind was tired. It had been a rough month at work, and a quiet day felt like a blessing. They found the item they wanted and held it in their hand while looking around for a second option. Nothing seemed rushed. Nothing seemed strange. Everything felt like a normal day until store security guards approached from behind. At first, the agent didn't realize they were the target. They noticed the guards walking fast, speaking quietly into their radios. The agent stepped aside, thinking they needed to get through. But the guards stopped directly in front of them. "Sir, we need you to come with us," one guard said in a firm voice. The agent blinked, confused. "Is something wrong? We have reason to believe you took something without paying," the guard answered. For a moment, the agent thought it was a misunderstanding. Maybe they had mistaken them for someone else. But when the guard pointed to the small box in their hand, the agent felt a strange mix of disbelief and shock. "I haven't even been to the register yet," the agent said calmly. But the guards didn't want to hear explanations. They asked the agent to put the item down and step aside. People nearby started staring, and a couple of shoppers whispered to each other. The situation turned embarrassing very quickly. The agent kept a steady tone, trying to explain that they were simply comparing items. But the guards insisted they had been watched on camera and accused the agent of trying to slip the item into their jacket. The accusation felt unreal. Being falsely accused was one thing, but being accused of something so small and petty felt even worse. The agent reached into their wallet and pulled out their identification, hoping this would stop the situation before it got worse. "I'm a federal officer, not here to steal anything," they said. But the moment the guard saw the badge, instead of calming down, he stiffened. It was clear he didn't fully believe it. "Anyone can carry something like this," he said. The second guard spoke into his radio, calling for the store manager. A few minutes later, the manager arrived, looking serious and impatient.
Yes.
After listening to the guards, the manager made a quick decision. "We're calling the police." "This will be handled properly," the manager said. The agent stood there in disbelief. They knew what would happen next. This wouldn't just be an embarrassing moment. This could turn into a public scene, the kind you see recorded by strangers and shared everywhere. The idea made the agent's stomach twist. Within minutes, 2 police officers entered the store. They walked over with firm expressions, already prepared to deal with a suspect. The agent tried again calmly to explain that this was a misunderstanding. They repeated that they were an FBI agent and presented their ID again. The police didn't dismiss them. But they didn't take their word either. They followed procedure, asking the agent to place their hands where they could see them and step away from other shoppers. A small crowd formed. People pretended to keep shopping, but their eyes were fixed on the scene. Someone pulled out a phone. Another whispered, "Is he really stealing something?" It felt painful to stand there silently while strangers judged them without knowing anything about who they were. The officers asked the agent to open their bags. Nothing was found except a water bottle, a notebook, and a pair of gloves. The agent answered every question clearly, never raising their voice, even though their heart was pounding with frustration. One officer looked at the item the store claimed was stolen. "Where exactly did you think he hid this?" he asked the guards. The guards insisted that the agent tried to put it in their pocket. But the officer noticed that the agent's pockets were too small to hide something that size. Something didn't add up. Still, following procedure, the officers said they would need to check the agent more carefully. This wasn't a full search yet, but the embarrassment grew deeper. The agent nodded, knowing they had no choice but to cooperate. They had spent years telling civilians the same thing: stay calm, follow instructions, let the facts speak. The manager crossed his arms, looking confident. The guard stood stiffly, as if waiting to be proven right. The agent took a slow breath and looked toward the floor, trying not to show how humiliating the situation felt. The police asked a few more questions, trying to piece together the story. The agent explained step by step what they did from the moment they walked into the store. They hadn't even reached the checkout area yet. They hadn't tried to hide anything. They were simply holding the item while comparing it with others. Despite how clear the explanation was, the officers still needed to do their job. They asked the agent to move to a quieter area of the store so they could continue the investigation. The walk to the back room felt long. People stared. Whispers followed. Someone even muttered, "Another one caught." Inside the small security room, the atmosphere felt heavy. The agent sat quietly, hands resting on their knees, waiting. They kept their breathing steady, even though frustration built inside like a fire. They had spent years protecting the country, investigating real criminals, catching people who spent their lives breaking the law. And now, here they were treated like a shoplifter over an item they didn't even walk near the doors with. Police officer stepped forward and said, "We're going to need to check you more thoroughly. Please stay calm and cooperate." The agent nodded. They had no idea that what would happen next would change everything and shock everyone in the room. The agent sat in the small back room, keeping their hands on their knees, trying to remain calm. The store's security cameras were still recording, and the soft hum of fluorescent lights filled the space. Every few seconds, a guard glanced at them with suspicion, and the agent could feel the tension in the air. They were not worried about hiding the truth. They were worried about how humiliating it felt to be treated like a criminal in front of strangers. It was a strange feeling, standing on the other side of the law enforcement line. The police officers began asking questions again, methodically going over the steps the agent had taken from the moment they walked into the store. The agent answered, calmly describing their path through the aisles, their choice of items, and the fact that they had never left the section without holding the item in plain view. Every answer was met with silent notes and nods, but it didn't seem to make a difference. The officers had procedures, and they intended to follow them. One of the officers, a younger man who looked nervous, asked the agent to empty their pockets. The agent complied without argument, pulling out a wallet, keys, and a few loose coins. Nothing else. The officer examined the items, and his eyes flicked up to the agent, now slightly puzzled. The size and shape of the item that had been supposedly stolen did not match what could fit in the pockets. Still, protocol required more verification. "We are going to have to do a body search," the officer said. "Standard procedure for suspected theft." The words hit the agent like a punch. They kept a composed face, but inside anger and disbelief bubbled. A full body search? While off duty? For something they hadn't done? It was surreal. They nodded silently, understanding that resisting would only make things worse. The agent moved to the designated area. Following every instruction carefully, the guards stepped back, unsure, their earlier confidence beginning to waver. Shoppers who had stayed outside the room whispered among themselves, eyes wide with curiosity and shock. No one expected a quiet afternoon to turn into such a spectacle. While the officers prepared to conduct the search, the agent's mind raced. They thought about how often they had been on the other side of these situations, instructing suspects to cooperate, keeping calm, so encrumpsting that the truth would come out. Now it was their turn to experience that vulnerability. And it was a strange mix of fear and clarity. The search began carefully. The officer instructed the agent to remove any outer clothing, and they did so, revealing only casual clothes. The agent's professionalism and calm tone remained unshaken. They answered questions without raising their voice, and their eyes never left the officer conducting the search. It was a test of patience and restraint. During the process, the officer made occasional comments to his partner, expressing disbelief that this situation had escalated so far. "This doesn't add up," he muttered. "The bag doesn't have it, the pockets don't have it, and yet the store insists. Something's off." What? The agent stayed silent, focusing on their breathing and trying not to react to the small whispers that drifted in from the hallway. It was difficult not to let frustration show, but they knew that any outburst could be used against them. Years of training had taught them control, and now they were using it for their own dignity. Meanwhile, the store manager and security guards exchanged uneasy glances. They had been so sure of themselves before, and now the situation was unraveling. The agent had complied with every instruction, and there was still no evidence of wrongdoing. The confidence of authority figures began to crack as doubt replaced certainty. The agent's mind wandered briefly to work, thinking about how many times they had handled cases involving real criminals, people who had committed serious crimes. And here they were, being treated as guilty over an item they had not taken. It was absurd, yet entirely real. It was a reminder that anyone, no matter their experience or position, could be caught in a moment of misunderstanding. A few minutes later, the officers completed the body search. Nothing was found. The item in question was still missing from the accusation, and the guards began to fidget. The agent, maintaining a composed expression, simply waited for the next steps. They were patient, knowing the truth was on their side. At that moment, the senior officer, the one in charge, reviewed the agent's credentials once more. His eyes widened slightly. He had recognized the badge for what it was. "Wait, you're an FBI agent?" he asked, a hint of shock in his voice. The agent nodded calmly, placing the badge where it could be seen. The words seemed to hang in the air. The guards and store manager stared, their expressions moving from suspicion to disbelief. No one had anticipated this revelation. The officers quickly shifted their approach, apologizing for the misunderstanding. The tension in the room began to lift, replaced by a sense of relief. The agent remained composed, but inside a mix of relief and lingering anger simmered. The ordeal was far from pleasant, but the truth had come to light. The store manager, clearly embarrassed, stepped forward. We apologize," he said, his voice uneasy. "It seems there was a mistake." The guards nodded, unable to meet the agent's eyes fully. The humiliation of having wrongly accused someone of such authority was evident. The agent accepted the apology silently, knowing that reacting emotionally would serve no purpose. As the situation settled, the agent took a moment to breathe. They reflected on how quickly normal life could spiral into chaos, how assumptions could escalate, and how easily authority could be questioned in the wrong context. It was a lesson in humility and patience, and a reminder that everyone could face unexpected challenges. No matter their role or experience, the officers helped the agent gather their things and escorted them out of the back room. The crowd of onlookers had dispersed slightly, but a few remained, whispering about what had just happened. The agent walked through the store calmly, their head held high. Despite the lingering embarrassment, once outside, the agent took a deep breath of fresh air. The ordeal was over, but the memory of being falsely accused and subjected to a body search would linger. They knew the story would be shared, perhaps exaggerated in retellings, but they didn't mind. What mattered was that the truth had prevailed, and their professionalism had remained intact. The agent reflected on the importance of staying calm, even when the world seemed to accuse them unfairly. It was a reminder that dignity was not determined by the situation, but by how one responded to it. And in that quiet moment, they felt a sense of quiet pride, knowing they had handled an impossible situation with grace and composure. After the initial shock of the revelation, the atmosphere in the store began to shift. The officers now knew who they were dealing with, and even the security guards and store manager could no longer act as if nothing had happened. The agent had proven their innocence, yet the embarrassment and tension of the situation still lingered in the air. The senior officer motioned for everyone to calm down. He addressed the store manager first, speaking in a measured tone. "This should not have escalated to the point it did," he said. The manager's face flushed with embarrassment. He had been certain the agent was a thief, and now the truth was undeniable. The store's mistake was obvious. He could feel the weight of having publicly accused someone of such high authority. Meanwhile, the guards looked uncomfortable. Their confidence had vanished, replaced by an awkward awareness that they had treated the wrong person harshly. They had followed protocol, but they had also let assumptions take over. The agent remained calm, standing with hands at their side, radiating a quiet authority that reminded everyone of the power of professionalism. The crowd outside the small back room, who had been watching in curiosity, began murmuring in surprise. Many had seen the exchange unfold, and now whispers spread about who the agent really was. People were shocked that an FBI agent had been falsely accused of shoplifting. Some shoppers began to realize how quickly situations could spiral out of control and how appearances could be deceiving. The agent looked at the item that had caused all the confusion. It was still in the bag, untouched and completely innocent. They picked it up, showing it clearly to everyone, and explained again that it had never left their hand until the misunderstanding occurred. The simple gesture of holding up the item made the situation undeniable. The officers and store personnel could no longer question the facts. One of the younger officers let out a small sigh of relief. It really was a mistake, he admitted quietly. The agent nodded slightly, acknowledging the truth but keeping emotions controlled. There was no need to lecture or scold. The facts spoke for themselves. The senior officer then addressed the agent directly, a tone of respect now replacing the earlier formality. "We apologize for the misunderstanding," he said. "It seems the situation was handled incorrectly from the beginning." The agent accepted the apology without a word, understanding that holding on to anger would do nothing. They had experienced worse, and the way they responded would define how the story would be remembered. The store manager finally spoke, his voice shaky. "We are very sorry for accusing you wrongly. We will make sure this does not happen again." The agent gave a small nod, recognizing that words of regret, while meaningful, could not erase the public humiliation they had experienced. The crowd outside began to disperse slowly, some still talking quietly about the incident. A few people who had pulled out phones to record the scene had already deleted the videos, realizing the story was different than what it first seemed. The agent noticed a mix of relief and lingering tension. It was a strange feeling to be both vindicated and embarrassed at the same time. The officers assisted the agent in gathering their belongings, ensuring nothing had been damaged or misplaced. The agent moved with composure, every step calm and measured. It was clear to everyone watching that this was someone who had been through high-stress situations countless times and had learned how to maintain control under pressure. As they exited the back room, the agent took a moment to breathe deeply, enjoying the sense of relief that came with finally being recognized as innocent. The city air felt fresh, and the sounds of traffic and everyday life reminded them that the world had returned to normal outside of the store. Yet, the experience lingered in their mind, a reminder of how quickly things could go wrong. The officer in charge spoke quietly to the agent. "We will make a report clarifying the incident. It should clear everything officially." The agent nodded, appreciating the acknowledgement that their name and reputation would be formally restored. Even so, the agent knew that the incident would remain in memory for those who witnessed it. A lesson about assumptions and the dangers of jumping to conclusions. For the store personnel, the experience was a humbling one. They had learned firsthand how important it was to verify facts before acting, especially when dealing with people who could not be judged by appearances alone. The guards and manager exchanged glances, silently acknowledging that they had overstepped and that their assumptions had caused unnecessary stress. The agent reflected on the irony of the situation. They had spent years training to handle unpredictable circumstances, managing suspects, and diffusing dangerous situations. Yet, in a moment of everyday life, they were caught in a situation entirely out of their control. The experience was a reminder that vulnerability could come at any time. Humility was always necessary. As the police officers left, they offered final apologies and advice. "You handled yourself very well," one officer said. "It's clear why you are respected in your line of work." The agent allowed a faint smile, appreciating the recognition, but staying humble. They had done what was necessary, remained calm, followed procedures, and let the truth come out. Walking toward their car, the agent thought about how this story might be retold. Some might focus on the embarrassment, others on the mistaken identity, and some might admire the agent's professionalism. For the agent, the key takeaway was simple. Dignity and patience could withstand even the most unfair situations. As they drove away from the store, the agent took one last glance in the rearview mirror. The crowd and the store faded into the background, but the lessons of the day remained vivid. They understood better than ever how quickly assumptions could escalate, how important it was to stay composed, and how resilience was tested in unexpected ways. The agent promised themselves that this experience, while uncomfortable, would strengthen their perspective. It was a story of misunderstanding, patience, and ultimately vindication. And as they drove, a quiet sense of satisfaction settled in. The truth had prevailed, their reputation remained intact, and they had navigated an extraordinary situation with grace, leaving a lasting impression on everyone who had witnessed it unfold. The agent returned home that evening, carrying a strange mix of exhaustion and relief. They had handled the situation with calm and professionalism. But the memory of being falsely accused still lingered in their mind. It was one thing to deal with difficult situations in their line of work. It was another entirely to experience such humiliation as a private citizen. The world could judge anyone, even someone trained to face danger and chaos daily. After settling into their apartment, the agent called a close colleague from work, someone they trusted completely. They recounted the story, speaking slowly to make sure every detail was clear. Their colleague listened, incredulous at first, but then laughter mixed with disbelief. "I can't believe that actually happened," they said. "Even trained officers can't escape everyday chaos." The agent smiled faintly, understanding that it was true. Being off duty did not guarantee safety or respect. People still made judgments based on appearances, and assumptions could escalate quickly. They realized that humility was a lesson that could come from even the most unexpected experiences. Meanwhile, news of the incident had begun to spread. A few bystanders had shared snippets online, but as more details emerged, it became clear that this had been a misunderstanding. The narrative shifted from accusation to astonishment. People were amazed that a highly trained federal agent could be caught in such a human and relatable situation. Some found humor in it, while others reflected on the importance of careful judgment. The agent considered the public side of the story, but decided not to dwell on it. They knew that media attention could be fleeting, and the important part was the personal lesson learned. What mattered most was how they had handled themselves and how they would carry that experience into future interactions. Every event, even one filled with embarrassment, was an opportunity to grow stronger. Reflecting on the store, Agent felt a sense of sadness for the employees who had been caught in the moment. They had acted based on what they believed was correct, yet assumptions had led them astray. The agent understood that people rarely intended harm, but mistakes could still have significant consequences. Patience and understanding were necessary to navigate such moments. In the days following the incident, the agent noticed a subtle shift in perspective. Friends and colleagues expressed admiration for their composure. Even casual acquaintances who heard the story highlighted how the agent remained calm under extreme stress. It was a reminder that real strength was not always about physical skill or authority, but about restraint, professionalism, and dignity. The agent also began to think about the systems in place that allowed such misunderstandings to occur. Procedures were necessary, but flexibility and careful observation were equally important. They considered how easy it was for assumptions to override facts, and how important it was for people in positions of responsibility to maintain perspective. It was a quiet reflection, but an important one. The store manager eventually reached out to offer a formal apology. The agent accepted it politely, understanding that words could not erase the embarrassment, but could acknowledge responsibility. The manager's voice was sincere, and the agent felt that the apology, combined with the correction of the mistake, helped restore balance. They understood that accountability was essential even when no harm was intended. For the agent, this experience reinforced the idea that life could be unpredictable. Even someone trained to handle threats, confront danger, and make critical decisions could be vulnerable to misunderstandings. It was a humbling thought, but also a grounding one. No one was immune to error, and no one was beyond scrutiny in the eyes of others. They reflected on the role of patience in such situations. Patience allowed them to stay calm, respond appropriately, and prevent the escalation of an already difficult scenario. It was a skill they had honed over years of service, and now it had been tested in a completely different context. The lesson was clear. Patience and calm could overcome embarrassment and misunderstanding. The agent also thought about the value of empathy. The guards and store employees had made mistakes, but they were human. Understanding this helped the agent let go of lingering anger and resentment. Holding on to negative feelings would have made the experience heavier than necessary. Instead, they chose to focus on the positive aspects, their composure. The eventual resolution and the lessons learned. As the days passed, the agent returned to normal routines. They went back to work, interacted with colleagues, and resumed daily life. Yet the story remained a personal milestone, a moment that tested their ability to stay composed in the face of unfair treatment. It was a reminder that true professionalism was not only about skills and authority, but also about character and resilience. The agent found themselves sharing the experience quietly with others, not as a tale of embarrassment, but as a lesson in patience, humility, and handling the unexpected. People were often surprised at how a simple shopping trip had turned into a situation that tested even the most experienced law enforcement officer. It sparked conversations about human behavior, assumptions, and the importance of staying calm. In the end, the agent realized that life could teach lessons in many ways. Some were intense, some were subtle, and some were public. This experience had been all three. It had tested their professionalism, patience, and emotional control. It had highlighted the fallibility of human assumptions and the importance of careful judgment. And it had reminded them that dignity and composure could leave a lasting impression. Even when faced with public scrutiny, the agent carried these reflections forward, quietly integrating the lessons into everyday life. They understood that challenges could appear anywhere, at any time, and that how they responded defined the outcome. The incident at the store, though difficult, became a story of resilience, perspective, and personal growth. It reminded them that true strength was not only in action, but also in patience, humility, and the ability to rise above unfair treatment. After the incident, life slowly returned to normal for the agent, but the experience remained vivid in their memory. They went back to work, carried on with daily routines, and interacted with colleagues as usual. Yet, the lessons from that unusual day stayed with them, quietly influencing how they approached both personal and professional situations. It was a reminder that even in a life filled with high stakes and danger, humility and patience were essential. The agent reflected often on how quickly a normal situation could escalate. One minute they were browsing through aisles, enjoying a calm afternoon, and the next, they were being accused of theft. The experience highlighted the fragile nature of perception and how easily misunderstandings could occur. People made judgments based on appearances, assumptions, and incomplete information. For the agent, it reinforced the importance of clear communication and calm reasoning in every interaction. At work, the story became a quiet reference among colleagues. Some shared it jokingly, while others expressed admiration for how the agent handled the ordeal. They appreciated that, even under public scrutiny and false accusations, the agent had maintained composure and professionalism. It was a subtle reminder to everyone that true strength often revealed itself in moments when the world seemed to judge unfairly. The agent also began to think more deeply about empathy. The store employees, the guards, and even the police officers had acted according to their training and procedures. Mistakes had been made, but none of it was personal. Understanding this allowed the agent to let go of any lingering frustration. It was a lesson in seeing situations from multiple perspectives, a skill that had always been useful in investigations, but now was applied to everyday life. In the weeks that followed, the agent noticed small changes in how they interacted with people outside of work. They approached conversations with more patience, gave people the benefit of the doubt, and observed carefully before making judgments. The experience had been a humbling reminder that anyone could be caught in a difficult situation, and responding with calmness, respect often mattered more than proving who was right. The agent also thought about how stories like theirs could influence others. They realized that sharing experiences of being treated unfairly, handled calmly, and ultimately vindicated, could teach important lessons. People often focused on power, authority, or status, but the real impact came from how individuals carried themselves when facing unexpected challenges. It was not about proving one's authority, but about maintaining integrity and composure. One evening, the agent sat quietly at home, reflecting on the public attention the incident had briefly received. There had been whispers on social media, some light humor, and some serious reflections on the dangers of assumptions. The agent considered the value of these discussions. While personal embarrassment was uncomfortable, the situation had sparked conversations about empathy, patience, and careful judgment. It reminded them that even mistakes could create meaningful lessons for others. The store, after issuing a formal apology, reviewed their procedures for handling suspected theft. Employees received additional training, emphasizing verification and careful observation before making accusations. The agent saw this as a positive outcome. The incident, while personally challenging, had prompted growth and improvement in the way the store approached sensitive situations. The agent also thought about the broader implications. Authority figures, whether in law enforcement or everyday life, were not immune to human error. The experience had demonstrated that assumptions could override facts, and that professionalism was often tested in the most unexpected ways. The agent embraced the idea that humility and patience were as critical as training and experience. Through it all, the agent felt a quiet sense of pride. Not pride in being vindicated, but in handling a challenging situation with dignity. They had not let anger or embarrassment dictate their actions. They had remained composed, followed procedures, and allowed the truth to come forward naturally. It was a reminder that true strength was often invisible to the outside world, revealed only through calm resilience in moments of uncertainty. The agent shared the experience selectively, mostly in private conversations with colleagues and trusted friends. They framed it not as a tale of embarrassment, but as a lesson in human behavior. The importance of perspective and the power of patience. People listened, sometimes surprised, sometimes amused, but always respectful of the agent's calm handling of an unusual situation. The story became a quiet inspiration for others, testament to professionalism in the face of misunderstanding. In time, the agent also reflected on the unpredictability of life. They realized that even with years of experience handling complex cases, personal vulnerability was unavoidable. One could be trained to face danger, but no one was immune to human error, social assumptions, or unexpected misunderstandings. Accepting this reality became part of the agent's personal growth. The experience also reinforced the importance of composure in public interactions. The agent noticed that staying calm and measured not only protected their own dignity, but also helped others navigate the situation more effectively. Patience, empathy, and integrity created a positive ripple effect, diffusing tension and fostering understanding. Ultimately, the agent saw the incident as a story about resilience and perspective. It had been a humbling moment, a reminder that life could present challenges in the most ordinary settings. Yet, by responding with patience and calmness, they had preserved their integrity and left a lasting impression on those who witnessed the events unfold. The lessons learned were subtle but profound, shaping the agent's approach to life and work in quiet, meaningful ways. The agent's final reflection was simple: even when wrongly accused, misunderstood, or judged unfairly, dignity and patience could carry a person through. The incident at the store had been more than an embarrassing moment. It had been a test of character, and the agent had passed. Life would continue to present unexpected challenges, but the lessons learned from that day would remain a guide for navigating the world with calm, resilience, and understanding.